Please be seated. I'd entertain a motion to come out of closed and go into open, moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. We have no presentations or petitions, no delegations. I'd entertain a motion for the minutes of previous meetings. This is December the 11th, Council. Open and closed, all council on December 17th, budget on December 11th, budget input, public input, December the 11th, planning and works, January 14th, finance and min, and community services, all on that date, as well as a closed committee. Moved by Councillor Kiefer, seconded by Councillor Foxton. All those in favor? That is carried. All of council received communications electronically. Does anyone have any issues they want to bring up or anything to highlight? I will entertain a motion to go into the committee of the whole to consider reports. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. All those in favor? That is carried. First on the agenda is under item 12, there are financial reports, and that we have A through D, so I would take them in one motion unless somebody wants them separated out. Moved by Councillor Strickland, seconded by Councillor Rentz. All those in favor? Those are carried. Move on to committee reports. Councillor Galloway, would you like to move planning and works?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'll move the recommendations, the 6 recommendations from the Planning and Works Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Foxton, do you want to speak to it and second it, or just speak to it?
I will speak to it and then second them as well, please.
Thank you.
Just to note, remember the other day we talked about the Roseville Road construction and no issues with it, no problems. What the concern is, we as a municipality never knew anything about the public meeting until that night or that afternoon, and then there were 2 different dates for it, and the meeting's tomorrow night, and I don't think the public's been circulated. And if I'm right, my colleague from Wilmot also had concerns in regards to public notices. We're not getting these out in a timely manner for the public to be able to really attend and take part in these, and I'd like to see it done better, please.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Councillor Foxton is seconding that. I will ask staff to make note of that. I see no further speakers. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Strickland, would you like to move the finance and admin reports?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to move the one recommendation from committee with respect to approving an action plan in 2020 to deal with the recommendations from the KPMG service review. I'd also like to add 2 recommendations from our caucus with respect to appointments to committees. Elizabeth Thorson, Amanda Hukias, and Christopher Pratt and James Barsby to the Heritage Planning Advisory Committee. And we also appoint the 6 members to the Grand River Accessible Advisory Committee for a 4-year term. Paula Saunders, Carrie Spears, Tamara Bell, Heather Clark Harris, and Marnie Seeley Baker. And that we also reappoint 9 additional members to that committee. I so move, Madam Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McGarry. Any speakers? All those in favor? That is carried. The clerk has just asked me to go back on the top of page 4 and just confirm that we moved and seconded in implementing an urban healthy policy workshop and council conference policy. The motion reads that the council approve the attendance of Councillor Galloway at the Implementing the Healthy Urban Policy Planning Workshop in Copenhagen, Denmark, in accordance with Council's conference policy operating principle number 2.
Where is that on the agenda?
Okay, that is on the top of page 4. So that's moved by Counselor Foxton. Do I have it seconded by Counselor McGarry? Anybody wish to speak to it?
Oh.
Counselor Clark?
Oh, sorry, I'm
Oh, you're
anticipating
do-
community services.
You're just too quick. Counselor Strickland, have you found the,
No, that's okay, but I'm not going to vote against it, so.
okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Now we'll go to Counselor Clark for community services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that council approve the following 4 recommendations from the Community Services Committee relating to the Ontario Works reloadable payment cards, the appointment of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee, and the feedback to the Government of Ontario in response to its public health modernization and to its emergency health services modernization consultations.
So moved by Counselor Clark, seconded by Counselor Shantz. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Counselor Strickland, would you like to speak to the next item, which is the budget? Everybody should have it on their place.
Yeah, it was a late starter, a summary of our recommendations from Budget Committee this afternoon. So before I move the motion, I'd just like to say a couple things and express my thanks again to Councillors Galloway, Jowett, Clark, and Chair Redmond for all of their input, and to staff and Mr. Dyer and his team. I'd also like to point out that for direct regional programs, our budget has a tax increase of 2.46%. And I would say 4 or 5 months ago, we established a target of 2.5 for regional programs. So we managed to get there with the support and help of council. And in this budget, we've increased investments in transit, increased investments in paramedics, increased investments to deal with the opioid crisis, homelessness, and a myriad of other demands for services and requirements for services that help keep our community as vibrant and as strong as it currently is. So I think it's a fair budget. I think that we have done a pretty good job in making sure we continue with our transportation master plan and our investments in transit, which include an additional 35,000 hours in 2020, and to continue with our business plan and encourage ridership and growth of our transit system. So I think it's a very fair and progressive budget at the same time, and I thank staff and committee and council for your support to get there. So the budget motions are laid out there. Basically, I'll summarize it for the benefit of the online audience, that we amend the preliminary 2020 tax supported operating budget as set out in Appendix A. We approve a budget with a property tax levy of $390,348,326, excluding police services, and that $390 million represents the 2.46% tax increase that I referred to earlier. We also amend the tax-supported debenture financing by $7.5 million and reducing the amount of tax-supported reserve funding by $7.5 million. That we also approve our capital forecast as submitted in our budget documents, and we repeal an existing bylaw and replace it with a updated one for user fees and charges, and that we also approve the police services budget, which represents a tax increase of 1.38%. So the 2.46 for regional plus 1.38 for police is 3.84, which represents for the average property tax, for the average property homeowner, tax increase of $78. I also would like to move the police capital budget as well. I so move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Counselor Jowett, any discussion? Counselor Galloway. Counselor Galloway, did you want the floor?
Yes, I do.
Okay, it's yours.
Councillor Jowett was showing a picture of her dog to me, so. No, further to Councillor Strickland's comments, I want to thank Councillor Strickland for the direction and leadership he provided during the budget process. But I did want to comment a little bit further in terms of what else we did in this budget. We have kind of put together a bundle of items that we are referring to as climate action items. Particularly, these are all transit-related. The 35,000 additional hours that Councillor Strickland referred to, the 28 new bus operators that we'll be employing to perform those hours, but also some additional, the route in Wilmot, the Mobility Plus increase that we're providing for. And this comes really as a result of the fact that this council has declared a climate emergency, as I think all area municipalities have. This is a contribution that I think we need to make towards that particular climate emergency to show that we are actually doing some positive things. We know also that our recently minted strategic plan is very significantly weighted in terms of active transportation and climate action. And we know also from the public input that we had on this particular budget process that the community values climate action items very highly. So in this particular budget, we have classified certain items as being climate action, and I think we need to highlight that to let our community know that we are taking positive action in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. And I think it's worth mentioning that this is a trend I hope continues because we have historically invested millions of dollars in active transportation and bike lanes, and not to mention the LRT. So we are already moving in that direction, and it's good to separate it out so that we can underscore the action and the animation that we're allowing within the community. So that's, I think, that very important. I see no other speakers. All those in favor? That is unanimously carried. Chief Administrative Officer, do you have any comments? The Regional Clerk, there is a recommendation. Do you wish to speak to it?
This is an appointment to the Sunnyside Board.
Appointment to the Sunnyside Board. It is before you, Lori Strauss, to be appointed to the Sunnyside Foundation Board for a term to expire June 2023 as outlined in the report as noted, dated January 22nd, 2020. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Rentz, seconded by Councillor McGarry. All those in favor? That is carried. Other matters under the Committee of the Whole, you have before you a recruitment process and a recommendation to recruit a Chief Administrative Officer, moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Harris. Is there any discussion? You going to change your mind?
Nope. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity.
All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. I would entertain a motion for the Committee of Whole to rise and Council to resume. Moved by Councillor Kiefer, seconded by Councillor Nowak. I want to Councillor Joe. All those in favor? That is carried. A motion to adopt the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Harris. All those in favor? That is carried. Any motions? Notices of motion. Any unfinished business? Other business? Questions? I would entertain a motion to enact the bylaws first, second, and third readings. They are written before you. There's A, B, and C. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Erb with his left good hand. All those in favor? That is carried. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor McGarry. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was the end of a great budget process.